Good evening, everyone. Let's get this meeting underway. Today's Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. Tracy, could you do roll call, please?
Bermal.
Here.
Harrington.
Here.
Sittig.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Wason.
Here.
Thank you. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. To my knowledge, there are no changes to what you see in front of you. Do I have a motion for approval, please?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item 4 is our work session. NLTV is going to turn off video for us here for this. I just want. All right, we will come back into our agenda. And item 5 is our consent agenda. Does anybody have any item on there that needs to be pulled off? Great question that was asked and a typo that was found. All right, seeing none, could I have a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6 is our public comment time, and this is a time for anyone in the audience that has something to bring to council's attention that's not already on the agenda. So if you are out there and would love to talk to us, please let us know. I will, going once, going twice. I'll close public comment. Item 7 is our engineer report. Kevin.
Okay, thank you. That was fast. I've got a very short report, just an update on the Dubuque Street Phase 1 project and the Jones Boulevard project. On Dubuque Street Phase 1, they're working on Phase 6, the final phase. The goal is to have that done and open to traffic by November 18th. They were out this morning after the rain, and they did some over excavation for a portion of that street, and they're preparing it for the pavement tomorrow. They did a little bit of pouring today, so they're making progress. And on Jones Boulevard, that's also nearing completion. A final walkthrough is planned for later this week, mainly pavers, although I think most of those done today. Completion of the pavement markings and signage. The traffic signals, that will be shut down on Thursday of this week. They've got to do some work in the control cabinet. So there will be some stop signs up there temporarily. Right now we're blocking off 10 to 3 outside the peak hours to do that work. So sometime within that time. And then the opening of the roadway, that's still up in the air a little bit. We're going to be discussing that during the walkthrough this week. It'll probably be a couple weeks before that roadway is open to traffic. But thought the contractor did a great job. They were really good to work with, and they'll be done ahead of their schedule. So that's all good news. That's all I have, unless you have questions.
Any questions for Kevin? All right, thanks, Kevin. Item 8 is our city administrator report. Ryan.
Okay, thanks. Just a few things on my end. You all know we met with the Harvest Estates neighborhood last week on Monday to talk with them about the proposed fire station location. Several of you were there. Thanks for being there. We had a number of folks who were concerned with what's being proposed. So we've taken what they've heard we've taken what we've heard, and we're trying to compile some responses to their questions, gather some additional information, and then I'll be back in front of you with a proposal on moving forward. So that issue is still out there, and we'll be talking about it in the days to come. A couple meeting reminders. I sent out some information about ICAD's annual meeting, which is this week, Thursday, and then the Better Together Group Awards Banquet, which is November 10th, also a Thursday, both starting at 4:30. Still time to register for both if you'd like. Let me know, and I can make that happen. There's, I think they'll be brief as well. I think they're scheduled from 4:30 to 6, so take up your entire evening. And then lastly, just a reminder that our next meeting generally would be on November 8th, which is Election Day. Elections will be held in this room, so we're moving that meeting to Monday, November 7th. 6:30 start is the plan. Monday, November 7th, this room. That's what I have tonight.
Thanks, Ryan. Item 9 is the mayor's report. And just a couple of things that I've been to and attended, and I think I've seen at least one of you at all of them. So this won't be breaking news to anybody. Last week, I started off, and Ashley joined me just down in Coralville, actually, for the Iowa Autism Project. There's a group down there that is doing a lot of great work for and with school-age kids in autism. I was only able to be there for a few minutes, and then Ashley jumped in. And I believe you probably were there until it was over. So if you want to say a few words when I'm done and hand it over to you guys, that would be great. They also serve adults down there. So it was awareness on my part that they existed and that they're here to support those in our community with autism. We had a great groundbreaking ceremony for City Hall last week. For those of you that were there for that as well, I just wanted to thank our communications department. We were just basically actors in their play. So we showed up, stood where we were supposed to stand, and took part in it. And I wanted to thank them for putting that on for us and highlighting our community. On the same night last week, we had the fire station discussion that Ryan mentioned. We also had a joint entities meeting. I think a number of us were there at both. And Eric, thanks for taking one for the team and staying back to finish up that discussion. While I was there, we heard from Sam Jarvis at Johnson County Public Health about a COVID update and where we are in there. We're in a good category here in Johnson County, and we would very much like to keep it that way. We also heard from Johnson County Ambulance Service, Fiona Johnson, she's the director of that, with an app called Pulse Point, and this is really the thing I wanted to talk about. If you are not aware of what Pulse Point is, search it, do a Google search on it. Quite simply, though, it's an app that you can put on your phone that will allow you to be alerted if you're within the vicinity of someone that needs CPR. You can also get other notifications. Brent's nodding his head. He's probably had it on his app, on his phone since phones came out a long time ago. So I've had it now for a week, and luckily have not had to help with CPR. But put it on there. It's a really great app to have out there. That's all I have. You've all been places I have been, so I will turn it over to you guys.
I'll go. I attended a number of those events that you mentioned, so I won't add on to those. But I also, as a representative for North Liberty, have been attending the Conventions Visitors Bureau meetings. And there's a lot of discussion about the upcoming sports seasons and all the people that will be here for World Cup. So more information will be coming out about that. And they spoke very highly about the Destination Iowa grant that was submitted on behalf of North Liberty.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else?
Oh, just want to echo and add that the Balance Autism event was incredible. They service individuals, both adults and children with autism, and they have a variety of outreach activities that help parents and community educators with resources so that children that are dealing with autism can participate in school and outside of school the most effective way possible. It is a chain that is operating here in our community, and we are very, very fortunate to have them as a resource. So excited to have them here.
Thanks, Ashley.
And I'll just follow up on the joint entities. After I think Chris and Rakisha and Ryan left, there was a discussion about transit, regional transit, not necessarily regional transit authority, but just partnering with having the city's partner to provide transportation through the area. That has been going on for a long time in the form of passenger rail. The idea of rapid transit bus has surfaced in the last year or so. And I think the decision, if that any entity can make any decisions, I guess, it was kind of agreed that the cities would discuss among themselves, and the city councils would discuss the issue and go back to the MPO and the joint entities at the next meeting with whether we're interested in studying that as an option. So that's something I'll probably be talking to Ryan and Chris about it in the future, about whether that's something we can put on the agenda and do. And then I did catch the end of the fire department meeting after that, and I just want to say thank you to Russ was there, Kevin, Ryan Heyer, Chris, and Brent all jumped in to help with a lot of unhappy people, and so thank you for that. That was a big lift for all of you, and I think a big shout out to our fire department staff as well for bringing this up and explaining what was going on. So, and I did just stop down earlier tonight. Senator Zach Walls was receiving the Iowa League of Cities Legislative Service Award. There was a little reception before the Coralville Council meeting tonight, so I stopped there before I came up here, and he mentioned that after the election, assuming he's elected, he would like to come and talk to the council sometime. So I know he's talked to you about that.
Thanks, Eric. And real quick, I forgot to mention that the next joint entities meeting will be in North Liberty on Monday, January 9th. So if you've not been to one or had been a while, we're hosting it just like the MPO meeting the following week. So a couple of weeks later. All right. Ross, item 11 is our comprehensive plan presentation.
So I see Charlie is with RDGs here in the audience, and I think he's just going to lead us on a quick presentation just to kind of summarize where we are, and we're kind of nearing the end of this process.
Sounds great. Take it away, Charlie.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Charlie Cowell with RDG Planning and Design. We've got a big agenda tonight, so just wanted to take a few minutes, like Ryan said, give you an update where we're at, some events happening tomorrow and the next day, and then what you'll eventually be seeing this fall as we move forward. Our process so far, we've been, as you know, been working on this for quite a while now, almost a year, approaching a year now when we kicked this process off last fall. The comprehensive plan for just those listening in, there's currently a comprehensive plan on the books. It was completed in 2013, and it has been your policy document to make land use decisions, transportation decisions, and other policy guides throughout the city. So this process was meant to update that plan. 2013 was 9 years ago, and a lot has obviously changed since then, and the projections of where North Liberty is heading in the future. So the planning process is really to provide more clarity on the future land use map, more flexibility as new uses and arrangements are starting to arise, expanding our growth area and updating our policy recommendations. We've been guided throughout the process with the committee, advisory committee, which you're probably aware of. We've been meeting with them fairly regularly throughout the process as we've been going along. We're nearing the end of the process. We've kind of went through a series of engagement activities and design charrettes, which hopefully some of you have been able to attend. And we're nearing kind of where we'll be presenting a draft plan and then eventually approval here this year. This is just a more detailed schedule. Tomorrow, we are hosting an open house at the community center from 5 to 7 for folks to come in, see some of the similar things in more detail that you'll see tonight, provide comment on some of the ideas and recommendations, and then also get more information on when the plan will be released in November. There is a virtual option as well at noon on Thursday. So to date, we've done a lot of different things. I won't dwell on any one particular item, but we do have a project website that's linked on the city's page you've all probably been to. We've seen about over 2,000 unique visitors to that website throughout the process, providing comments, providing map pin drops of their ideas and things like that, survey responses as well as just general downloading of information as we've been going along. So we had over 200 comments initially on our map to get initial ideas. This happened at the beginning of the process. Community survey, nearly 500 responses to get us started. And just common themes as we've been talking to people throughout the process. These are specifically from the survey, but we held a number of listening sessions with stakeholders throughout the community. We attended a variety of different events, kind of just dropping in with the neighborhood ambassadors and others. And there's a lot of themes that have obviously come out, which the plan will focus on here, and you'll see some of those in our planning elements. But the bulk of the plan is really thinking about where North Liberty is growing in the future and how to plan accordingly for different types of land uses. And we obviously all know that North Liberty is one of the fastest growing cities in Iowa. So for our planning projections, the plan is looking at a scenario of around 3.5% annual growth, population growth a year. That's similar to other planning studies that you've recently completed. So we've kind of kept that in line for our land use planning purposes. And what does that mean? That really means we need to be thinking about a lot of land potentially for development in the next 20 years, upwards of over 4,000 acres worth of land, which again is not going to develop all at once. It's a long range plan. We're planning for 10, 15, 20 years in the future, thinking about where those areas would occur. The process really started with our committee and the design workshops back in April, thinking about our transportation network. It was one of the highest comments we heard was connectivity across the community, north, south, east, and west, as well as trails as well. So the plan will be detailing that future transportation network. A lot of these areas are already planned, but there are some others that would need to be added or continued as growth continues to occur. One thing throughout the plan, and this is the same with your current 2013 plan, is it's meant to be flexible. It's going to propose areas for new transportation routes, but not necessarily the exact paths. So it's more about getting to point A to point B, and then detailed engineering studies and things like that would determine the actual location of some of those things. The land use plan, we've kind of taken a different approach than your current land use plan based on what Ryan's seeing come through his office every day and what you're experiencing in the community from the variety of different housing types and arrangements and commercial and industrial, and this desire for more mixed use spaces and flexibility. So the land use plan really focuses on 6 different categories. I won't go into detail into each one of them here, but generally 3 kind of residential, commercial, mixed use type categories, and then a more flexible commercial industrial category for a variety of different types of uses that might locate around the interstate and Penn Street and other kind of high traffic corridors. Similar to today, the future land use map is all about flexibility. So we can't predict the future, but we can plan for different types of situations that might arise in the future and how we want those to contribute to the community's identity, traffic circulation, walkability, all of those things. So it is a general map in that sense. And the plan will also provide some more detailed guidance on more specific types uses that would fit or could be appropriate in different locations. So it's really focused on, again, allowing some flexibility for mixing land uses in areas, still preserving our floodplains and our environmental features, creating options for active mobility like walkability, bike paths, and those sorts of things within and through developments. And then obviously promoting economic development, making sure we're providing those critical connections and opportunities for growth and economic development where appropriate. There are some special areas in North Liberty as well, which need a little bit different treatment than just the general land use categories. And the plan is providing some more detailed recommendations for areas like Cherry Street or the original town center developed platted area, because those housing arrangements and things are a little bit different than what we would see developed today. So there's some policy recommendations based on preservation of existing housing stock for affordability, as well as the unique characteristics of Cherry Street along with the new City Hall location and what that could be in the future. And then some new development areas as well. We'll be highlighting, it'll highlight areas to develop for more specific type of uses rather than just a general high intensity or commercial district, and this is just one example of those areas in the plan. And then not to forget about everything else that makes North Liberty a city. The future land use map is kind of the umbrella look at everything, and then these planning elements kind of give the character or teeth to a lot of different elements of that future land use map. So detailing things such as mobility, inclusivity came up a lot during the process, not just in housing diversity and different housing types, but also income levels, making sure we're a welcoming community for everyone. Recreation spaces and places and gathering places came up a lot as well. Protecting the environment. I mentioned economic development. The image and building on your community image efforts in the past few years, and identity efforts and wayfinding and branding, and those things are going to be a big part of this as well. And then implementation obviously is an important part. So making it, giving you a clear implementation schedule of short-term, medium-term, long-term priorities, and then people who outside the city and yourselves that should be brought in to partner, such as economic development organizations, school district, and others, because Ryan can't do everything. So, so with that, wanted to keep it brief, but happy to answer any specific or detailed questions you have on the planning effort and kind of where we're at in the process.
Charlie, I'll throw you a softball. The page that shows how many acres it's needed to support growth,
Yeah.
do we have that many acres inside of the city?
No, you don't. So we, right now, I think our calculations have there's about 2,200 acres of land in the city right now that's vacant and not necessarily developable, but vacant. Some of it might not be developable because of topography or wetlands or things like that. But so this would require obviously growth and annexation and to meet that target.
Do you guys have any questions for Charlie? Kind of touching on things that we'll see in more detail here coming up in the weeks to come. All right.
Just like to add, Charlie's been great. I mean, he was in our interview of, and we always look to, sometimes there's a bait and switch of, the salesperson and then somebody else comes in, but Charlie was there during the initial presentation and super responsive, and we just couldn't be more pleased with how this is turning out.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Item 12 is Watt's zoning amendment, and item A is our public hearing regarding proposed zoning amendment. Is there anyone in the audience that has any comments regarding this proposed zoning amendment?
Good evening, John Martin with MMS Consultants, representing the applicant. As you can see, it's a rezoning a piece of property that was recently annexed into the city of North Liberty.
Hey, John, 1 second. Can you press pause? You're next in our agenda, officially. This is just public comment time.
Perfect.
It's okay.
I'll wait.
Is there anyone that has anything? Don't sit. You don't sit. You're probably going to be up next anyway, but is there any public comment for this?
I'm not getting up to speak.
You're not getting to speak? All right. John, continue. My apologies for interrupting you.
No worries. It gave me a chance for my foot to wake up a little bit. So, just to jump back in, this is a piece of land that was recently annexed into the city of North Liberty. The intent is it has an existing home and some sheds and some other things on the property. The intent would be to zone this to RS4. It's complementary to the RS6 zoning that's across the street. There's still a large portion of ground to the north, the west, and surrounding that's still within the county. So it would be complementary to future uses as that property is potentially annexed into the city as well. There is RS4 further to the north as well. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Any questions for John? Russ, did you have anything else to add to this?
Just, we had a neighborhood meeting. Only one person attended, didn't have any objections, and the planning commission unanimously recommended approval. So staff does as well.
That's what it looks like. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Item C then is our first consideration of ordinance number 2022-23, an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa, from ID Interim Development District to RS4 Single Unit Residence District. Could I have a motion for this item, please?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or discussion? Tracy, roll call, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 13 is Donovan Holdings zoning amendment, and again, a public hearing regarding proposed zoning amendment. Anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this that's not already on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Item B then is staff and commission recommendations. Russ.
This is a large rezoning. It's over 40 acres. So 23.36 would be to our C3 higher intensity commercial district. Again, the C3 district is a newer classification. We're starting to see people, particularly along this corridor, starting to request that zone change. Office and Research Park was, I think, a good concept at the time, but we're not really seeing much development in the way of office and research parks. This gives people the same kind of flexibility for larger buildings and mixture of uses, either in the same building or separated uses. And then the other component of the development would be the RM12. And that part is 23 acres. The C3 is about 18 acres. And this is a concept plan. We have a preliminary plat going through the process right now. So at this time, it's just a concept. So portions to the west and south would be C3, and everything kind of east and north would be the RM12. But you can see Madison Avenue continues south and then has two public streets that would connect to Kansas. And those lots are just generally showing how the lots would be configured. So, and then at a neighborhood meeting, a few people attended, just had some general questions. Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval as well, and staff does too.
Any questions for Russ? All right. Item C then is our first consideration of ordinance number 2022-24, an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa from ORP, Office and Research Park District, to RM12, Multi-Unit Residence District, and C3, Higher Intensity Commercial District. Could I have a motion for this agenda item?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions?
So Russ, are we seeing this because, I mean, I would have thought, especially after Geico went out that way, that this would have developed faster. Is this going to allow that, you think? It's going to draw more attention?
I think we're responding to what market conditions are. I don't think people are building large office complexes, especially in the post-COVID era. But it allows for other types of commercial uses that people may want to develop. The one thing that it allows for is higher intensity multifamily buildings and standalone buildings that we haven't done that. They've had to be in a mixed use building or we've had to do a PAD, and there's two multifamily buildings out there that were required to have first floor commercial that have been vacant for years. So still allows offices, allows hospitals, allows hotels. I think people are just gravitating towards it because it allows that flexibility. So I think in that light, it's going to be better and encourage development.
I was here when we had the original redesignation of this area, and it was redesigned that way because people didn't want multifamily housing. So we went through quite a bit of anguish over that, and I'm not sure that the office park type area is not. I don't think it's dead yet. So.
Times have changed, though. They continue to evolve. So no, that wasn't in vogue, having that much density out there for housing. But I think we've seen a comeback. Any other questions or comments? All right, Tracy, can we have roll call on this first consideration, please?
Sittig.
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Wason,
No.
Harrington,
Aye.
Motion carries 4 aye, 1 opposed. Item 14 is GRD Burleson LLC zoning amendment, and item A is also a public hearing regarding proposed zoning amendment. Anyone in the audience that's not part of the presentation that would like to speak? Thank you for coming up.
Hi, thanks for having me. First of all, my name is Kate Connell. I live at 2786 North Liberty Road. I have a little bit of a cold, so sorry if I sound a little stuffy. I'm one of the 4 homeowners that owns one of the homes that are adjacent to the land that's being proposed that it gets rezoned to C3. A few caveats with this because I think it's important for you to understand for this land. I know it was in your packet, and hopefully you saw my letter as well to the Planning and Zoning Committee or Commission. 2 of these houses are owner occupied. One of those is ours. The other 3, there's one other homeowner there, and there's 2 that are long-term rentals. Excuse me. People live in this area. So one of the things that I outlined in the letter was that that with the caveat that as we go to C3, and I want to say too, just a quick little intro. My husband and I both work for city government. We understand the policy around this stuff. We're really supportive of commerce. We're really supportive of local businesses that could potentially go in this space. It's all really exciting and great. When we bought that house, we knew that development was coming. We knew that Forever Green Road was coming. We knew that Forever Green Heights was going to have, thousands, not 1,000, but 1,000 units on it. We understood all of that, but that land was zoned to be residential at the time. And so C3 for us feels like the highest allotment that the city could be allowing, and it feels incongruent with traditional urban planning. And we've talked with Ryan about this, and I appreciate all your time that you've given my husband and I as we've asked a lot of questions about code through this process. But this allows for the highest in intensity. And as we've already talked about, C3 hasn't been something that's been used in North Liberty. And North Liberty has still sustained a lot of development with just C2. Eventually, those homes won't be there. The idea is for this to be high intensity and for everybody to kind of shift out of that area so that there is commerce there. But for now, people still do live there. So the idea of putting C3 when C2 would be just as viable for a developer to come in and offer some really great things for the community seems like too big of a jump for us. And we've tried to understand kind of some of these differences. And we don't want to boil it down to just how high the building is, but we also want to not just focus on livability, because it's not just that we want to live in a great place. We do. We're county residents. We eventually hope to be annexed into North Liberty. But we also want to make sure that it's there, the checks and balances that exist through these different commissions and through the code that exists are there and that we're using it. So just 3 quick questions. You guys don't have a time limit like Iowa City, right? We good?
We actually do, but
Am I
no
close?
one. It's a 5 minute.
It's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm talking quick. So a couple of things here. So these are the 3 questions that we have. There's proximity to single family homes here. Urban planning is traditionally done in a stair-stepping way where you go from a single family to multiple units to apartment buildings and then to commerce. This would be directly adjacent to backyards, which would impact livability there. The big questions that we have here is that the C3 zoning that is put in front of you right now doesn't actually qualify from our understanding for the 35 feet frontage that this needs to be. When you look at this, there's no frontage to Dubuque or to North Liberty Road. And the frontage is why C3 was approved to the north, because it is a mainstay. It is on the road. It's high trafficked. You'd see bigger things with higher intensity. This land is landlocked. It's behind our homes and it's behind C3. There's no frontage to either of those roads, and they only have 30 feet in frontage. They need to sell some of that land to the neighbor to the north in order to qualify. So the question is, why would we even allow it to be rezoned under this when it currently doesn't qualify under the city's current own code? The other thing is that we know that land changes hands. Obviously, this could be sold to somebody else going to develop it. So these non-public conversations that are happening about intent really can be problematic if it gets sold. The other 2 questions are helping with understanding intended use and conditional use. I know requiring a plan is not binding, but it does create transparency, especially when people live directly adjacent to that and are worried about what's coming. Codes to be met is a huge piece of that puzzle. Making sure that there's hopefully more substantial setback requirements and height restrictions is also helpful. The C3 that exists in North Liberty is 6 stories. It's on Penn. That we're being told that's not what's coming here, but I mean, we don't really know necessarily without a plan or without commitment to that plan. And then lastly, is the city comfortable waiving these requirements? So all of this is designed to have checks and balances. So we talk through these things and we think holistically about where the city's going. We understand the city is going to high intensity here, but we'd like to have a little bit of time bought so that can help happen over generations as those homes degrade. And then that land can be sold to be C3 along that frontage if the city, doesn't have intent at this point to buy that out. But it happens over time. Urban planning happens over time. It doesn't happen by us coming in and making land behind someone's house C3. So those are my comments. I know it's all over the place. I appreciate your time. And again, I appreciate staff's time with this as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience for comment purposes on this agenda?
I know the applicants in the audience. I don't know if it's next.
We'll get to that next.
Okay.
Yep. Item B then is staff and commission will make applicant part of this as well if there's some more to jump on there for.
Good evening, I'm Ben Watson representing the applicant. Tonight, we've worked with Ryan and Ryan on this piece of ground, and as I think Ryan will allude to in the presentation, the C3 was meant to kind of attach to the C3 to the north. We've talked to the folks that own that piece and have talked about them buying a piece of that to kind of continue their development to the south. I understand that, single family, we met at the neighborhood meeting. So I understand the concerns about not wanting to develop against single family residential, but I think with all the growth and how much this area has changed with two kind of major arterials, if we talk with staff, we feel that, this piece long-term should be commercial, and we feel like that C3 zoning, we know that we got to come back and work with the city to do site plans and kind of refine any plans for what we build in the future. But we felt like this gave us the most flexibility, and with still the checks and balances the homeowner mentioned, I think will come in the site plan process with city staff and with future P&Z meetings. So we're certainly sensitive to trying to be a good neighbor. There is for what it's worth, in the southwest corner of the parcel, there's an area that is going to kind of act as the start of our stormwater detention facility. So there will be kind of a natural buffer to the two properties to the south. The two properties to the north have actually expressed interest in selling in the near future. So we feel like we can kind of be a good neighbor to the folks that are there and still work with staff to try to create something here that would be good for City of North Liberty and into the future here. So I'll let Ryan kind of make a presentation. I'm here to answer any questions if anybody has any. So.
Okay. So we're at 7.64 acres. Again, as you mentioned, we had some parcels to the north that were rezoned to the C3 district. I don't think they have a formal relationship, but they are discussing about developing this area in a comprehensive way. I just kind of wanted to give some regional context, and I know it's hard to see in this, but I think it was mentioned you have the Forever Green Heights development that's just to the south, and you can kind of see how that puzzle piece fits in there. 1,000 residential units. You've got the junior high, which is just to the north end of that property, a 40-acre parcel. Obviously, you have North Liberty High, which is, I think, about 15 or 1,600 students. Just to give you an idea, and the reason I mention that is, just to give you an idea of why we think this area was designated on the current land use map. It's designated as commercial with residential, which contemplates a higher intensity commercial use or a mixed use district. On our proposed future land use map, and Charlie mentioned this, it's designated as urban high intensity, which is our higher intensity uses. And we look at locational criteria when we look at those higher intensity uses as being close to the interstate. Kansas was one we just had. It's on an arterial road. Here we're at the intersection of two arterial roads. And those are, generally speaking, some of our areas where you have higher, or healthier commercial nodes. Think about Penn Street and Rancho Way. Those are intersections of two arterial roads, Forever Green Road and Rancho Way. So I think that's why it came to be as designated as our higher intensity commercial use. So from that standpoint, the C3 district makes sense. It makes sense to as it's going to need to be tied in some way to the property to the north. And having a zoning boundary line come in the middle potentially of buildings is sometimes problematic. The C3 district does have an additional setback when you're adjacent to residential. It goes from 10 feet to 20 feet. The C2 district does not have that. As Ben mentioned, there's a natural area that's about 50 feet where it drains to the southwest, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to alter that site because that's where the historic drainage flow occurs. So we did have a neighborhood meeting. I know we did have the homeowners attend and object. We have 4 property owners over there, so we have just the one property owners that have objected. Planning Commission did consider this, and they did recommend approval unanimously.
What kind of questions do you guys have for Ben or for Russ?
I guess for staff in general, have we considered conditional zoning at all?
There's some question about the legality of it. And I mean, you can certainly tie conditions to a rezoning.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, is that something that is, it's not something that North Liberty has done. I know Iowa City does it all the
No
time.
one has asked me about that in this particular context, to answer your direct question. We have attached conditions, this body has attached conditions to rezoning requests before.
Okay. Not
Not real recently, but we've done it. But
with explicit agreements with
typically, yes, and typically worked out beforehand. With the owner has some opportunity to have feedback on whether that's workable. Is
Right.
what's been our past practice. But that's certainly something that you can do, and owner feedback is not required to impose any conditions you think are appropriate.
Are we able to table a conversation to discuss that? Or not necessarily a conversation, but the decision?
Well, we have 3 readings, and so you could certainly move it on, have that conversation, and bring it up on the second vote. So, I mean, that's the beauty of having 3 readings here, is it always can move to that next step without going down that process.
I would echo what he said. That's we saying no on the first one is disfavored. Let's if there are minor conditions that you want to impose, or then this is something that is a good idea for continued discussion or discussion right now. But to bring back a proposed amendment and continue discussion over 2 or 3 readings, and you can table or bring it back to a second or first reading if you want to extend the process if need be. So there's final passage happens when this body decides that it happens. It can't happen before 2 readings or two meetings have taken place. So typically we do it in 3 meetings, right? Could take longer if you wanted to. Not that I'm recommending that. So you can have as much additional discussion as this body deems appropriate.
So Ashley, you asked the most, I think, intense and useful question that was included in some of Ryan's responses right now. Do you feel that you either have a path towards clarity on your questions in the next couple of weeks before our next meeting, or do you think it would take more time to develop, or do you think that you might not get there? Can you kind of help us understand your thinking a little bit?
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, we had a phenomenal conversation this morning, and I walked away feeling like I had clarity. And as the day has progressed, I feel a little less clear. The biggest questions I have are, why we wouldn't lead with a plan and then make that decision. Why we're doing this in the way that we're doing it, and then the other question is, what if, with the 2 parcels, the one to the north. What if that is not something that is incorporated with the parcel in discussion? Then are we saying this would be C3 irregardless? I mean, that doesn't, to me, make any sense if it doesn't have any frontage.
Well, if you're looking right at me,
Yeah, because you're shaking.
It's fine. So that would be an appropriate condition to attach, for example.
Okay.
Is that this zoning attaches upon, whatever terms are, being attached to or sold to the property owner, connected to in some legal sense with the property to the north. It could be included in there if that's what you want to do. But I really strongly encourage letting staff have that conversation with the applicant, or you have this conversation with the applicant to so that we're not blowing up a deal arbitrarily that might otherwise be 85% okay, right? If you, that's just.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, it does have frontage on North Liberty Road, doesn't have a lot of frontage, but the conversations I've had was, showing a mutual public road serving both sides of the development. And that would need to happen. Otherwise, if it were left at, say, I think it's 30 feet, if I recall correctly, and couldn't gain enough frontage, it's not developable unless they got a variance. I think what we're just asking is the zoning appropriate in a location, in this location? Staff does believe it is. It's difficult to see on the screen, but the area highlighted in green to the south and to the southeast is also owned by the applicant currently. The parcel to the east is vacant. We've had conversations with their attorney about participating in some form of fashion about. So we really look at this area as being kind of an opportunity site for kind of a cooperative commercial development with shared access points to North Liberty Road and Dubuque Street. Probably a shared stormwater detention pond as it drains to the south as well.
What is the setback from the property line if it was C2?
10 feet.
So
Regardless. So if it's C3, it's 10. If you're abut residential, it's 20.
So, but if it's C3A, it would be.
If it's C3, if it's adjacent to residential, it's a 20-foot setback. So the setback increases, understanding that the intensity is a little bit more in C3.
Yep.
And just to be clear, you're saying that C2 does not have that.
That's correct.
Increase.
And to also focus in a little bit, we're just talking about the zoning here and not necessarily how it will develop. But these are both questions that relate to zoning.
And actually, I forgot to, that was a good point of, why don't we have a plan at this point? Most of the rezonings we see do not have a site plan attached to it. The exception is if we have a PAD.
Mm-hmm.
PAD is required to have a site plan. So I would say the majority of, for instance, the zoning that we just looked at previous to this case was a large 40-acre zoning that had preliminary plat that's moving forward, but didn't have a plan of exactly how that's going to develop. And a lot of times the development community is looking to get through this rezoning process to take that next step of how do these buildings and streets arrange on this land before I really have to start spending some money on this.
Yeah.
Right, one of my biggest concerns is that, this sets some precedent. We have some homes here that are obviously of below the area median price point, but there are houses that are somewhat above. And in other areas, such as the Donovan that we just discussed, we've got C3 abutting properties that are not of a price point that is even at the median. So what precedent does this set if we're going to essentially put C3 next to properties that are a little bit higher price than what we're seeing out in the marketplace?
I mean, again, we go back to the tools, the planning tools that we have is, our current future land use map and our proposed future land use map, and understanding our proposed future land use map could change. But really the vision for that area was to develop a commercial node kind of at the intersection of those two arterial roads. And that's not to say that commercial development can't be sensitive to those neighbors. And I think, she mentioned that, they were aware that commercial development would occur and having proximity to some of those services may be nice. But I think, we have the opportunity, you all will be reviewing a site plan of whatever gets developed and have the opportunity to review that. I mean, if it meets code, we're going to have to recommend approval, but I think you also have an opportunity to say, well, you said you were going to be sensitive to your neighbors to the west, and we can review that because you'll review the site plans that come through for development.
So hypothetically speaking, if we were to sort of meet in the middle and zone it hypothetically C2 and the land to the north is C3, what does that do? How does that change it?
It just gets a little weird when you start, well, first of all, C2A doesn't allow for multifamily buildings, and they'd have to be a mixed-use building, or they'd have to come back and do a PAD. It just doesn't allow for that flexibility that I think people want. Now, it's on my list of things to change to allow a little bit more flexibility in C2. Ryan and I had this discussion, and sorry to bore everybody here, but I kind of view as, the C1 is being our neighborhood commercial district. Think about our Cherry Street. C2 is something that's a little bit more highway oriented. When I say highway, like Penn Street. And then C3 is something a little bit bigger. And so you have these progressions of scale, I think. And the C2 just doesn't, it limits building height, which may be appropriate in this location. But to answer your question directly, it just gets funky with where you have buildings and uses that may cross a zoning boundary with different setbacks, and a use may be allowed in this. So now you have to try and align buildings in certain districts and then move them and rearrange them in certain ways. Now they could always come back and rezone to adjust that line, but that tends to be the problem that I see.
So just from a development standpoint, you're saying then it's best to be all the same thing, because then you know what you're getting, and you're not gonna have to go back, and the developers aren't gonna have to like go back and rezone things, which then takes time and money in and of itself. So
Been doing this a while and been have dealt with the zoning line that sometimes comes between a building, and it's
so
problematic.
So I'll tell you that my parents, they live next to houses, and they sold the house next to them, and then the city allowed them to rezone it commercial. And there's a quick trip thing, 10 feet from my mom and dad's house. So 10 feet you do not want. Okay. So just letting you know that, good stuff. What do you want? Do you want 30 feet? 40 feet? What would,
Am I allowed to
yeah.
talk? Oh, I want to know
Okay.
what was going to go there. And I think, I feel like I'm talking on a term, but it's an important area for North Liberty. And I think that we need some accountability. And it does cost money, and they are in a business to make money. And that we pick to live there. I mean, like it's our livelihood. And I think that's fair. I think that's accountability, and I think that's checks and balances. So, it's great that there's stormwater. Like we benefit the most from that with where we're situated. But I think it's a precedent that we're setting. And it's not just because we have the nicest house out of those four. It's like it's forever. There's ramifications, I think, from this.
Just for the record, we
it's gonna
can't do that
happen.
again.
Sorry.
It's all right. That was out of order for us to do that. So, but that's fine. Yeah, you're still on.
So, the one thing I will say with the plan, I understand what you're saying. It's a little scary to not have a plan, but I think the plan comes when we get it rezoned to C3. And we go through that with staff, and I think there'll be a good neighbor meeting in that process, or it could be.
There's not, but I mean, we have contact information that we would
So,
forward.
so I think that's, in our mind, the plan really comes when you start, laying these buildings out and working on what you're actually gonna put there, right? So, the C3 zoning allows multifamily. That's what the folks to the north would like to see on their portion of it. And so we really would like the C3. It also, the setbacks, I think, are a benefit. They'll probably, frankly, be more than 20 feet just because of the stormwater system that'll start there. And so I guess in terms of a plan, we feel like that's, I guess, part of the process with staff, and we feel comfortable that we can, work through that process with staff and with P&Z and with council.
Russ, are there, I know there's a stepped up setback in C3. Are there screening requirements as well?
Yes. So, thank you for mentioning this. When I did the large code update, I included landscape buffering that was very prescriptive, requires trees every 30 feet and hedges that form a continuous row. Before, previous code language is a little nebulous, and it said to enough screening to form an effective screen, which doesn't help me very much. So this, we will require within this area, within this 20-foot setback landscape buffer to be trees and hedges and those types of things. So yes.
It sounds like at least in the southwest part, this is likely, would that buffer need to be there?
So if you can, it's hard to see on the screen, but you can kind of see this natural drainage feature.
Right.
So within that, it doesn't have to be within the west 20 feet. It could be within whatever is considered the buffer zone adjacent to that property. So maybe it's on the east side of that retention area or future drainage area.
Okay.
It'll have to be incorporated in their site plan.
Thank you all for those questions and the back and forth. To summarize, I think I see two things here. Number one, we have it intentionally zoned or for a commercial use out there at that space, and where it's just a matter of getting there finally. And I think also that neighbors there, Kate and others, recognize, and she acknowledged that this is space that will ultimately be commercial in the future. The pace of getting there and the unknown right now is just a little uncomfortable. But again, having trust and patience with each other and getting there. And that's the sense I get so far, and what I've heard from Russ and from him working with Ben in this way. So can we take some vote, get some roll call going on this one? And again, this is not the end all. We get two more shots at this. So if you have some questions that maybe could be clarified, or some objections that could be overcome through conversations, I would urge us to have that in our second consideration. Get two more shots at this. So with this, item C then is our first consideration of ordinance number 2022-25. An ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa, from ID interim development district to C3 higher intensity commercial district. Could I have a motion just to open this consideration?
So move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do you guys have any other questions or comments good for the conversation?
Mayor, I would just say, I would echo moving it forward, but with the contingency that there's additional conversations that are had with staff on possible, changes in future readings. I would support tonight, but understanding that there needs to be additional conversation.
Duly noted. I think that's our intent.
Mayor, may I
Yes, sir.
interject very quickly? Just with respect to attaching, I assume Mr. Siddig knows this, but with respect to attaching conditions to zoning, those conditions, in order to be effective, will need to be agreed to in writing by the owner of the property before a public hearing. So we'll have to have another public hearing before they can go into effect. So we don't have to go back to the first reading, but we'll need to have another public hearing as part of that.
We can attach that to the second
We
reading.
can, and the agreement, the conditions need to be agreed to by the applicant in writing beforehand. And once that happens, then those conditions can take effect.
Grant, can the public hearing be continued? Just so I don't have to re-advertise?
No, you'll have to re-advertise,
Great. Problem.
publish it and everything. All are welcome.
I guess I would like to see some discussion with the developer, between staff and the developer, about maybe limiting the height and making sure that we're going to get a fairly large setback there and good screening. I know the screening's in the code, but I think those are the conditions that I would be looking for personally. And I mean, obviously, frontage is not necessarily frontage, but access is a big deal, and they're going to have that regardless. So I don't know that that's something that I feel like needs to be in a conditional zoning agreement. But
Thank you for the feedback.
I think with the screening too, on that point, screening takes years to fill. I'm an impatient person. And if it were me in this particular homeowner's case, I don't have 5 years for the trees to fill in the space that I don't want to look at. So there'd be additional conversation on that point as well. Not just putting 1-inch trees in there and 15 years from now it fills. So.
All right. So with that, do we need to formalize what Councilor Smith and Councilor Smith and Siddig have said here then, and can we add this to our second, or how do we go through this, Grant?
No, you can,
We need to add public hearing to the
Exactly.
second reading.
Exactly. You can have your first reading tonight, and we can come back with a list of changes that have hopefully been agreed to and signed off on by the property owner between now and 2 weeks from now, or 13 days from now.
Second reading doesn't have to be 2 weeks from now. It can be 13 days from now. It could be, yeah.
Yes, we could.
27 days from now. Or 8. Excuse me. Go ahead.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. You guys okay with that? Nods?
Yep.
Okay. You got that okay, Tracy?
It was discussion. There was no
Discussion.
Just discussion.
structure that
Okay.
needed to be recorded there.
All right. Can we have roll call then, please?
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Bermal,
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, everybody, for your time on this one. Item 15 is the City Hall project, and item A is our public hearing on proposal to enter into a general obligation municipal loan agreement. Anyone in the audience wishing to make comments in regards to this loan agreement? John, I thought you were coming back up, or I'm just kidding you. Item B then is resolution number 2020. I'm sorry, I need to close public hearing. Item B is resolution number 2022-111, a resolution taking additional action on proposal to enter into general obligation municipal building loan agreement. And could I have a motion to just open this discussion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Ryan, can you color this picture a little bit?
Sure. This is, when we got the bids in for the City Hall project, City Council agreed we to borrow an additional $500,000 for that project, mainly specifically to fund the pedestrian plaza. So we've had a resolution now establishing a hearing date. We just had the public hearing. And now this resolution will approve a loan agreement and will give the city authority to borrow that money down the road.
Thank you. Do you guys have any additional questions for Ryan? All right. Seeing none. Tracy, roll call, please.
Sittig,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Item 16 is our Heritage Drive project, and this is, item A is resolution number 2022-112, a resolution approving the temporary construction easement agreement between John Paul D. Rethwish and the City of North Liberty. Have a motion to open this conversation, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded.
This is the. Sorry, man.
It's okay. Any questions and comments? Go right ahead, Grant.
This is the fourth of 4 easements needed for this project. All of them were offered freely, no compensation for this, and then this will allow us to move forward with the project this winter.
Thank you for that clarification.
Well, allow us to have the easements needed to move forward with the project.
All right. Tracy, roll call, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 17 is ARPA Transit contract, and item A is our resolution number 2022-113, a resolution approving the contract for same-day on-demand transit services between Johnson County seats and the City of North Liberty. Could I have a motion for consideration of this resolution?
So move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions that weren't asked so far of Ryan or staff?
No, but Mayor, I would just make the comment that this is what our residents have asked for with transit. It isn't standing out in the rain and the snow waiting for a bus that only shows up once. It is on-demand service, and this is what residents are asking for. So this is a great thing, and I'm glad that we can partner in this.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Tracy, a roll call, please.
Bermal,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 18 is our Front Street Place Lot 1, and item A is resolution number 2022-114, a resolution approving the stormwater management facilities maintenance agreement and easement between the City of North Liberty and Matnick LLC that establishes the terms and conditions under which stormwater management facilities will be maintained for the Front Street Place Lot 1 in the City of North Liberty. Could I have a motion to open this for consideration?
So move.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Do you have any questions on this one?
Just, is that a wet pond or going to be dry or?
Wanted to thank John Marner for the prettiest exhibit we've ever had.
Excellent.
But Mayor, to that point, I've only seen 2 dry bottoms that have actually been that. Because of the water table and the clay soil around here, they are designed that way and they start that way and they're planted in grass that way. Unless something's different about the depth of the water table here, I assume that this will be wet. Am I wrong?
The very bottom, maybe. It's very small, the very bottom of it. There's actually quite a few dry bottoms that are dry. Yeah.
Boulevard.
Yeah, there's
The
a number
largest
of
one
them.
is where?
There's a number of them.
Sorry, not to put you on the spot here. I
Yeah,
don't need
just
to do
north
that.
of Zeller. What's the park there? That's a
Creek.
detention basin.
Yeah.
Quail Creek, that's a detention
Quail.
basin,
Where's
as
the
well as
wetlands?
the subdivision has a large dry one that's always dry. Corner of St. Andrews and Jones, that one's always dry.
Okay.
The schools are generally dry.
Anything else? All right, Tracy, roll call, please.
Sittig,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 19 is Solomon's Landing Part 1, and this is resolution number 2022-115, a resolution approving the final plat and accepting the improvements for Solomon's Landing Part 1, North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion to open this for discussion?
Your Honor, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is not the correct resolution for this. This is, I'm afraid I can't access it, but I believe that we've modified the caption of this. We're not accepting improvements. We're accepting provisions for the improvements of this. And I apologize if this is not the correct draft that made it into the packet here. The body of the resolution is correct where it says, whereas provisions for the construction of public improvements have been satisfied. But the caption of this is incorrect. And so I want to, the caption doesn't have any legal effect. It's the whereas, it'll be okay. It should be pursued. But I want to make sure that the council here understands that there are no public improvements that are being accepted with this. This is, and I'll talk more with the discussion point. I'm sorry, I just realized there was an error here. I wanted to point it out.
Stuff before I need to walk out the door.
I'm almost there in the packet as well.
Page 187.
Yeah. If you would have said that a minute ago, that would have been really helpful.
I probably should have said that a minute
No,
ago. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It does read the same way as what the agenda reads on here.
And I apologize, folks, that we were in sort of a mad scramble last week with this.
I gotcha. All right, so it should read, it's a resolution approving the final plat for Solomon's Landing Part 1, North Liberty, Iowa. So excluding the terms accepting the improvements for.
Or should it say, I apologize, but
It's okay.
Grant had said accepting provisions for the improvements.
What Ryan has is correct.
Which is what I just read.
That's
So
what you
I'll
know.
read it again. This is resolution approving the final plat for Solomon's Landing Part 1, North Liberty, Iowa.
Okay.
Thank you for that. As Grant said, the contents of the resolution are not changing. The important stuff in there, it's not changing. Do we need to make that's what I'm reading. That's what we're going on here. So
You're good.
can I have a motion on
Well moved.
this discussion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Anything else, Grant?
I do need to mention this is a little bit different than some of your other final plats that you've done.
Thank you.
Our code requires for final plat approval that typically you would construct all the public improvements or make arrangements for them. Almost always we have people that will just go ahead and build all the roads and put in all the utilities with it. You have the option under our code to provide security to do so, whether that's a letter of credit, wheelbarrow full of cash, or in this case, a performance bond. And so the applicant or the developer has put forth a performance bond. I've reviewed this with outside bond counsel to ensure that it satisfies our criteria. Since this is something we don't normally do, we are satisfied that the city is as protected as we're ever going to be with a performance bond with this one, and so we do recommend approval.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? All right, Tracy, roll call, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all. Item 20 is the Evermore Part 2, and item A is resolution number 2022-116, a resolution approving the developers agreement for the Evermore Part 2, North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion to open this conversation?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions on that or any comments? All right, Tracy, roll call, please.
Sittig,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item B then is resolution number 2022-117, a resolution approving the stormwater management facilities maintenance agreement and easement between the City of North Liberty and DERS 380 LLC and Moina North LLC that establishes the terms and conditions under which stormwater management facilities will be maintained for the Evermore Part 2 in the City of North Liberty, Iowa. The motion for this agenda item.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions? Tracy, roll call, please.
Smith,
Aye.
Bermal,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Sittig.
Aye.
Motion carries. And finally, item 21 is our county road maintenance agreement, and this is item A, resolution number 2022-118, a resolution modifying shared road maintenance responsibilities between Johnson County, Iowa, and the City of North Liberty, Iowa. You have a motion to open this one up, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Do you guys have any questions on this? Okay.
So my understanding is the only change is with Jasper.
Correct.
Okay.
It's nice to see all of those improvements or how we maintain all of those roads in one document like that. But yeah, it's a good question. Tracy, roll call, please.
Harrington,
Aye.
Sittig,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Bermal.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 22 is our anything for old business. Seeing none, 23 is for new business. And 24 is a motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you, everyone.